You're too late. I've already summoned Meteor.
Okay, let's go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the L2R2 PlayStation Podcast. My name's Fonzie, and I'm joined by my co-host, indie game dev, and my UK bruv from another mum, Callum Monroe. Callum, how are you doing?
Yeah, good. I now know what happens to Final Fantasy VII, so I'm a changed man.
Wow.
But yeah.
How's it feel to be on the other side of this? You feel like your chest hairs have grown, you've just aged, and you're more...
Yeah, I feel definitely aged. I think I feel like I've aged quite a few years from stress. But no, yeah, it's been a real trip.
Nice. Well, yeah, I want to get into that. I want to get to some of the news stories. How's your week been? What have you been playing? Anything crazy going on?
Not particularly. It's pretty much just I played Resident Evil 3 up until Friday when Friday Final Fantasy came out, and then from then I've just been playing that. Beat it on Sunday, and then whenever I have been on PlayStation, I've just been sort of going through getting some miscellaneous sort of things I missed, and I've started it on hard difficulty now. So just mostly been Final Fantasy since Friday, really.
Really, I imagine that sounds about right, because that's such a meaty game. There's so much there. It's like there's no real way to rush through it. And then why would you? There's so much going on. I feel like no one wants to rush through that.
Yeah. It's I was sort of in two minds about sort of how quickly to finish it, because I knew that I'd want to do everything I could my first playthrough, but I also knew that until I finished it, I wouldn't be doing anything else. So I sort of felt like I had to finish it so I could, do productive things as well. Because whilst I hadn't finished that, I was like, this comes first. I've got to get through this and find out what happens, because I didn't want anything to be spoiled, and I just wanted to sort of, and I was just generally excited to see how it played out. So yeah, I think I clocked about 35 hours to beat it, which seems like it's a little bit on the longer side of what other people are doing. I've seen some other people getting around like late 20s, like early 30 hours. So, but it was a great length for me. It was long enough, and after playing Resident Evil 3, it felt even longer. But yeah, I've got So I mean, it's probably best going to what you've been playing, because otherwise I'll talk for about 4 hours about Final Fantasy.
Well, and I want to get into it for sure. Just quickly, as far as what I've been playing, I just kind of not finished completely, but I've been playing more RE3, the remake, just more of the multiple playthroughs, unlocking stuff, and having a blast.
Cool.
But it also, and that's why I texted you a couple of days ago, it scratched this, or it revealed this itch that I had to finally finish RE4. And so now that's my goal. I actually booted up my PS3 for the first time in a while, because I have RE3 on there, RE4, and I'm playing it. And I'm halfway through, and there's a lot of feelings going on, and it's cool to have something forcing me to actually get through it, because there are times, I mean, it's a beautiful game, it's an awesome game, but there are times where I have to struggle to keep playing it. For me, mainly it's with dealing with the president's daughter. I forget her name. But
Ashley.
I hate her. She sucks so much.
She is the worst. Yeah,
and just those missions,
really
those escort missions. It's like, what are we doing? But so right off the
but
bat,
her voice is like blood curdling, like high pitch. Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah, if she gets caught by the Illuminati dudes when they throw over her shoulder, she's just yelling at you and screaming, and it's more like an annoyance. You're never like you feel bad for her. You're just like, come on, really?
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely get that.
It's bad. We'll get into one of the articles we have today is like just more. It's not confirmed 100%, but it's basically going that direction for an RE4 remake. And playing this, I'm like, oh yeah, there's plenty of places where we can make some improvements. One of them is her. Yeah, for sure. That whole aspect.
Get rid of her. Yeah.
Maybe they could just write her out, or just it would be dope to see. We'll get into it, but like it'd be dope to see. Maybe they change her roles a little bit. Like maybe she actually can hold her own a little bit, or is more of like Kratos and his son, where he actually does something. He's not like an annoyance. He's actually helpful.
No. Yeah, he's actually part of the sort of game.
Right,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think that would be quite cool. And now with how Final Fantasy VII's done everything, you never know, they could change everything.
Yeah, or at least give her a can of mace or something. She can spray the Illuminati guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Something
or a brick or some rocks or something.
Yeah. Well, anyways, we'll get into that. But just been playing that, and actually, because I booted up my PS3 for the first time in a while, I've just been going through it in the marketplace and like buying old games that I had downloaded but I never like transferred over. So playing the old Tony Hawk's that I actually still purchased on my PS3, Crazy Taxi, all these older just like PS3 games that were older than PS3, but like that I re-downloaded on the PS3. Playing through a little bit of the original or of BioShock Infinite. I had the DLC on that. It's just kind of cool I haven't really had an excuse to play the PS3 in a long time. And the only reason why I played it there was because on PS4 for RE4, you have to play it on PS Now. There's no way to just buy the game. It's linked to that service. Yeah. So if you want to play the game, you got to subscribe to PS4 or play it PS Now.
I'm sure you can buy it on PS4. I'm sure
you used to be able to, but now if you haven't already bought it, it's linked to that service.
Yeah.
So you gotta.
Oh right.
Yeah, they have a few games where it's like they don't even give you the option anymore to buy. It's only subscribe to PS Now to play it.
God. Is it the PS4 version so you can download it? You don't have to stream it.
I believe
on the PlayStation Now.
I believe you can download it now. But since I had it already, it's like I'll just boot up the PS3 and it plays fine. I mean, it has its issues, with movement, but it's not. It's not because of the PS3. It's just because of how the game was made.
It's just the game.
Right. But just been playing that and just kind of being very lazy lately. But not a whole lot. To report.
There's not much else you can do really.
Yeah. Alrighty, Callum. So one of the articles here is really just first off your take on Final Fantasy 7. So the remake released on Friday. I've been hearing a lot about it. It's been taking over my Twitter feed. A lot of high praise and some controversy with like how they've changed stuff. So let's keep the spoiler stuff at the end. But like, what are your first impressions of this remake?
So up until the last sort of hour or so of the game, I absolutely adored it. I mean, it's probably one of the best Final Fantasy games I've played in terms of gameplay, its soundtrack, the story's done really well. It looks amazing. It takes lots of because with Final Fantasy 15, which I didn't enjoy very much, I felt like that just left everything that people enjoyed about Final Fantasy behind. So it gave it like a huge sandbox open world. It took away any tactical point of combat. It just put in loads of like fetch quests and it took out magic as well, which is like a huge part of the sort of Final Fantasy combat as well. And whereas this Final Fantasy, in terms of like game mechanics, I feel like they've really scoured through previous entries, taken like cherry picked features from them and implementing them into this. So for example, the combat in itself is very different to lots of Final Fantasy games. It's one of the best combat systems, I think, maybe even the best combat system I've seen in Final Fantasy. But they've taken the stagger system from Final Fantasy 13, which basically means when you're attacking an enemy, you can build up this bar that after the bar's full, it staggers them and then they take more damage and things like that, which is always a really fun mechanic to have. Its systems, like its weapon upgrades, how you upgrade your characters, they're all like the perfect depth. It's not too much, and it's really easy to understand. But it does give you a lot of customization. For example, like your weapons, you like find lots of different weapons for each character, and they all share a pool of like upgrade points. So you never have to worry about which weapon you're using. You'll still get to upgrade it. So it's quite nice in that respect. And it takes staying on sort of the weapons as well. It takes a mechanic from Final Fantasy 9, which is my favorite Final Fantasy, which is basically every weapon has a unique ability, but once you've used that weapon and that ability that's tied to it enough, or you've done certain things, you'll become proficient in that ability, which means that you don't need to use that weapon to use that ability. So it means that it means that you're still like it still wants you to use all these different weapons and try them out, because some of them act differently to others. But if that weapon isn't quite the playstyle you like, then all you need to do is use it, fill this criteria to unlock its proficiency, and then you've now got that weapon's ability and you can use it on all the other weapons as well. So
that's a really cool
idea. It's really good, and that was last seen in Final Fantasy 9, and it was really good just because it gives you a reason to try out all the equipment.
Right.
and it's sort of, because I don't know if you agree, but in other RPGs, like, you'll just hoard all these, like, all this armor and all these weapons, and you'll just end up selling them all because the stats aren't quite as good as what you're currently wearing. Whereas having these specific abilities tethered to these, like, bits of equipment, it sort of persuades you to use other things just so that you can unlock these abilities, and by doing that you're basically fleshing out your character's arsenal of abilities and things like that. So I feel like in terms of, like, design, I feel like they've really gone back to other games in the series and taken a lot of, cherry pick some really good things rather than trying to really go in a new direction to try and cater to everybody, which is what they did with 15, I feel. But I mean, that was just the gameplay, really. The gameplay is what I think makes it so impressive, and I think it's just a real masterclass in that area. But yeah, it's I don't really know where to go, because there's just so much I could, like, gush about.
Well, with the gameplay itself, any issues anything that rubbed you the wrong way, or are they kind of nailing it with what they've decided to leave behind and improve on?
So there was one thing that rubbed me the wrong way at first, and that was the like AI of the characters you're with. I felt that, because you sort of have to attack to fill up your ATB meter, which lets you use your abilities and lets you use items and lets you use spells. And at first, I felt that whoever you weren't controlling, their ATB would go up really, really slowly. So if you were sort of, invested in attacking this certain enemy, and then you were waiting for one of your AI partners' ATB gauge to fill up so they could heal you or do something whilst you're doing something else, it was very difficult to do because their meters would fill up so slowly. But I realised as the game went on that it wants you to switch between characters often. So,
Gotcha.
And as soon as I started doing that and becoming more accustomed to that, it actually made the combat feel a lot better, because I was sort of getting used to, looking at my different characters' ATB gauges, seeing who needed to sort of increase it, quick switching to them, and then as soon as you switch to them, someone else's might have filled, but they've got that quick command button, so it all just like falls into place, really.
Nice.
In that respect, and but no, I mean, I think that the side quests in the game are kind of, they feel a bit like filler. They don't do a huge amount for the game. And I think that, I mean, this isn't a criticism for me, but a lot of criticism a lot of people have is that it feels quite linear. But I prefer that, honestly. I like it when story-driven games are linear, because you can never upset the pace yourself. So you can never, like, go off and do lots and lots of things when really that in the main story you have like 5 minutes to do something, but you just spent 3 hours doing loads of side quests, kind of thing.
Right.
But on that point, where there are side quests, there's only like 3 sections in the game, or like three or four like chapters, where you'll get to a point and then there'll be some side quests you can do. And I think that's a really good way to do it, because, like I said, that it allows the story to sort of decide when it's linear and when it isn't. So it just means that it's constantly paced how it should be. And yeah, I just think that it's I think it's better to be linear than to be open world and let you sort of wreak havoc on everything, when there should really be there is a story that is trying to be told at the same time as well.
Right. And I wonder too, with them building, because with this first part of this remake, you're kind of, from what I understand, you're limited to one area. So I feel like the devs were kind of wanting to give you the idea or the ability to explore, but still kind of keep you on track to hit these story beats. But still, because they've fully expanded on, is it Midgar, that first area?
Yes, yeah.
So they've expanded on it so much, apparently, that they need to give you, a kind of a breadcrumb way to get through it, but still let you explore around.
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing. I mean, the Midgar section in the original Final Fantasy VII is linear anyway, and there's no free roaming around in Midgar in the original.
Yeah.
But I think after playing the remake, I think that there was just so much visual storytelling to do with Midgar. With the plates in the sky, the slums that are underneath the plate, just this huge, like amazing science fiction design city that on Final Fantasy VII they couldn't really get across because of it was a product of its time, and you can't really you can have text boxes explaining what the city looks like, and you can have these weird like cutscenes and drawn static backgrounds, but you really can't visually describe what the city's like. So I think that there was just so much to show and to do and to say about Midgar that I think that it needed to be fleshed out like this. It had to be done in this way to really give it the sort of description it deserves.
Yeah, that's awesome. I wonder too, as I hear people describe this, as you describe this, it seems like this part of the game is so huge, what they've done. It makes me then wonder, how big will this complete game be? Like, if this is just this first chunk, and eventually we'll start hearing more about this part two. How big can we expect this entire experience to be? If you've already said you're around 30-ish hours with this first part one, I can't imagine how it's going to be when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be a big one, and it's difficult because you look at games like you got like Persona 5 Royal, which is supposed to be like 100 and odd hours to finish. Games like Red Dead 2, which is like 80 hours. Some of the other Final Fantasy games are sort of 60 and above hours as well. But I feel that that a lot of those games are fleshed out by side things, and a lot like more sort of things that are quicker to create, but they take time for the player to do. Whereas I feel like Final Fantasy VII Remake's a very specific experience. Every single part of the game is completely like over designed, and you always feel like you're getting like 100% production value in every single part, whether that's the NPCs around you, and it's not like Red Dead 2 where it's a fully realized realistic world. I mean, it is still very Japanese in ways, and it's still very there are parts where you sort of like recoil and cringe, but there's just something about it. It just feels very like they've put a lot of effort into this world and into it, and you can just really feel that.
Right, and that's part of the charm. I mean, you wouldn't want, just like we talk about the Resident Evil franchise, you wouldn't want to fully remove its weirdness. So like you have to, especially when you're doing a remake like this, you have to make sure you balance that with the right amount of what that secret sauce, that thing that's always there. So you can't get rid of that. those times where you cringe. I mean, you got to lean in at certain points. How do you feel about some of the characters themselves, as far as like the story, how they've written some of the characters? I know we talked about them kind of revising. There's that tank of a dude who's like in your party. I know they kind of revised him dialogue wise, and like how have they fully fleshed out these characters?
So really, really well. I mean, like I said to you, I played the original Final Fantasy 7 quite, about in the last like 2 years or so for the first time, and the characters for me were not quite the strongest characters in Final Fantasy I'd seen. They a lot of the time it was hard to get a feel, because you could tell that they were really trying to tell like a really deep psychological story at times, and it's just sometimes quite difficult to get that across with these weird character models and these the text boxes. But they've really just given so many dimensions to these new characters. I mean, Barrett, who's the leader of Avalanche, he's still this really like burly, aggressive guy, but he shows his passion, and you can really feel that he's like in charge of this group. And Cloud is they really play onto his sort of like mental issues, which is the big plot twist of the original. And there's a lot of times where you really feel like he's like really not very nice. Like that, I remember there's a side quest where you help some old guy who wants to visit his wife's grave or something, and I can't remember what it is, but I think Cloud asks him for like 4,000 gil to do something. And I was waiting for like the character who's with you at the time to sort of butt in and then make it all okay, but it just ends on this really sour note. and Tifa and Aerith, the two sort of main female characters, they're awesome. They're both very different as well, which I think is quite hard to distinguish sometimes in the older Final Fantasy games. Aerith is this really sort of like fun, quirky character who sort of like she knows that Cloud gets annoyed easily, so she's always trying to like wind him up. And then you've got Tifa, who's this sort of quite nurturing but like really hardy character as well. And then you've got the three Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse, who played a really minor role in the original, but they've been fleshed out completely, and they've all got their own dimensions to them, and you really get to know a bit about each of them, and it's just really fleshed out the characters so well, and the characters that you play with and fight with, they're all so that they're so well designed. They all feel different. They all have their own unique pros and cons, and because that's another problem I had with the original Final Fantasy VII was I love it in Final Fantasy or just RPGs in general, where you have characters that are like dedicated roles. So you've got your tank, you've got your white mage, you've got your black mage, you've got so like you've got your healer, and you've got your warrior or whatever. It's nice to have these sort of specific roles for each of your characters, so you know exactly how to upgrade them and how to use them in battles. And the original Final Fantasy, you could just make everybody exactly the same, really. There wasn't a whole lot of customization in that respect. But in the remake, Tifa is extremely powerful and fast, and she's got, because everyone has their own unique abilities. She's a really good like aggressive attacker. You got Cloud, who's quite sort of versatile. He can, as long as he's sort of like up front of his sword, he can sort of do anything. You got Barrett, who's a tank. And quite a good support class. So they've really sort of given each character like a specific role as well, but not too obvious. So you still have to experiment and play around and find out who's best at what. So yeah, I think the characters are another one of the sort of real good things about the remake. They've really done a solid job in bringing them to life in sort of a new vein.
Now, from what I understand, there's some kind of all I interpret from this remake is like what I see on Twitter is people like freaking out, loving it. But from what I understand, there's some kind of like crazy decision you have to make with two of the female characters. Is that a thing? Because I feel like I keep seeing these memes of people saying like, "Oh, if you don't choose her, like you're crazy. If you don't choose her, you're crazy." Like, is there something going on there?
I think that's just like people deciding who they like the most out of the female characters.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I've seen a lot of stuff like that as well. I don't think there's any sort of big choices like like that in the game. But it is quite funny because you've got these three female characters and they all seem to like love Cloud, and he just doesn't seem to like anyone. Right. So it's quite a cool, fun dynamic to see. Yeah. But yeah, no, I've seen a lot of stuff like that as well.
Now, with your time, you said you've completed it so far. At this point, so do you feel now at the end of it, there's been so much build to this Final Fantasy VII Remake, you've completed it, do you feel like they supplied enough to withstand all the hype and the long waits and tackling a remake in the first place? Are you satisfied with this first part?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's definitely hit the mark. I think it's definitely a incredible game, and it'll go, and for the right or wrong reasons, it's going to be the talk on everyone's lips for a long time. And like or hate the ending, I think there's still going to be a real, what's going to happen next kind of vibe for the next part. But the real difference I noticed was it's really not a remake in the way it was marketed. Well, maybe not marketed, but in the way people assumed it to be. It reminds me a little bit of how you've got like the different Spider-Man films,
like a reboot,
and how, yeah, exactly. So, and I mean, I see a lot of people saying they shouldn't call it a remake. I think remake's still the right term because it's remaking, the story for this game.
Right.
But yeah, I mean that it's very, very much that world and them characters and that situation, and then just a new direction. I mean, it does follow a lot of the story beats of the original, but it especially towards the end, it really changes things up. And at first, I didn't mind, the additions and the sort of different directions it was going in. But towards the end, when it ended in a certain way, I wasn't sure how to think about it. But but now I've sort of had some time to think, sort of dwell on it. I think it's quite good because it means that if this had come out and it was a beat for beat remake, fleshed out, but still had the same story beats and everything happened the same way, it would make the original Final Fantasy VII just completely worthless. Like, no one would have a reason to play it, because this new one's out and it tells the story the same way. But the way this has gone, the original Final Fantasy VII Remake still is worth playing despite the remake as well, because they really do towards the end go off in different directions. So it took me a while to sort of absorb the shock of the ending, but now I'm quite excited because I don't know what's going to happen now. It's kind of like I don't know what's to come now. It's a real new telling of this story. So it although it sort of took away my initial excitement to see all these things recreated, I then sort of got a new excitement for sort of the unknown that's going to come.
Nice. Yeah, that's really good to hear, especially, I'm not a huge fan of this franchise, but like I always loved it, respected that people have so much fun with it. And so that makes me happy that they're willing to change it enough to like refresh the energy for this whole thing, because otherwise it's almost like artistically, why tackle it if you're just remaking it completely? Yeah, it looks better, it plays better, that's fine, but also you want to take a little bit of a chance and kind of, because you can't erase the original, it's there like you mentioned, and now you have more of an incentive to play it because it's a different now storyline a little bit with how they end that. So I like that they're willing to take this chance, and it seems to be working by twisting it a little bit.
And it's very clever how they've done it as well. There's a story element throughout the game that's completely new, but you don't realize till the end what it actually is there for. So it is quite clever in how they've done that. It's kind of like one big metaphor in a way to show like that now this first game's out the way, that Square can now really do whatever they want with this and take it in any direction they want. You'd imagine that, I still would like them to at least follow certain massive story beats of the original, just because it's a big part of the story and the characters in the world. You still want to see certain locations, you still want to see certain characters, you still want to see certain plot elements recreated. But yeah, I think it's exciting and it's clever. It's just a clever way of doing it, I think. And we can go into that in a bit more detail if you like.
Yeah, let's transition there. But, so I'll put up a little disclaimer. We're now going into spoiler territory, but so now explain to me, I guess, throughout not only the ending, but let's start with throughout the game. What have they changed that is somewhat of a spoilery thing then that leads up to that new change at the end?
Yeah. So immediately the thing that that seems to be quite different is Sephiroth, the main, one of the sort of main villains of the original. He doesn't show up at all until sort of the end of Midgar, and even then he's not in it very often. But he's like a real staple of the story through Cloud having flashbacks and things like that. Where he sees Sephiroth, and I didn't mind that because it is sort of like laying the groundwork for their like relationship, and then he comes at the same time he does in the original, but then towards the end you have like this very like anime style Kingdom Hearts kind of like fight with Sephiroth, which I just felt like they've sort of like now raised the bar really high. I think it would have been better to have these flashbacks, have Sephiroth show up, but then leave him until later in the later games, because it's sort of like he shows up and you fight him and the music plays as the same as the final boss fight in the original. He has his like wing, which you don't even see till the very end of the game in the original, and it just sort of like accelerates really quickly and makes him a huge part of this game when I don't really think he had to be. I think there was plenty of stuff there to just let him be in the background, let these flashbacks happen, and really build him up and build this rivalry between Cloud and Sephiroth up to for maybe the next games. But so I feel like they could have maybe shown a bit of restraint there. But the biggest change is these enemies called Whisperers. I don't know if you've heard anything about them yet, but they're not at all in the original, and they're basically these like ghostly hooded things that show up from the beginning of the game, and they show up all the way throughout, and they show up at certain times, and you can't quite tell whether they're good or evil. Sometimes they come and they like help you because they sort of like get rid of a bad guy or stop a bad guy from doing something, or they'll get in your way and stop you from doing something. So they just sort of like show up here and there, and then at the end, so this is a big spoiler, and it's from here where things really start taking the real turn to change the story. And this is like the last two chapters. You find out that these Whisperers are they basically control fate, so they're there to make sure that everyone stays on a certain path to like fulfill some destiny or whatever. So if something's going to happen that isn't the right fate or isn't the right destiny, they'll intervene and make sure this path happens. So for example, Barrett gets killed by Sephiroth, and that doesn't happen at all in the original. I mean, Barrett survives all the way through, but then he's brought back to life by these Whisperers, these harbingers of fate, because he's not destined to die there or whatever, which was all fine and whatever. But so from there, you then all this stuff with Sephiroth happens, and you're trying to like chase him out of the city, but these big harbingers of fate come down and they stop you from leaving. So in classic sort of Final Fantasy style, you have to fight the harbinger of fate, like this big like final boss kind of monster, and he spawns all these like these four like other harbingers, and they're quite cool. They're typical JRPG final bosses, and it was a pretty cool little boss fight. And then so once you kill them, you're free of these Whisperers. You're free of this like this path that they're trying to make you go down. And then so after all that happens, and it sort of starts playing the ending cutscene, it shows I don't know if you heard of Zack. He's one of the Final Fantasy characters.
No, that's maybe the more normal sounding guy I've ever heard from Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
No, I haven't heard of that guy.
So this is like a...
He does their taxes or something, or what does he do?
Yeah, yeah. So this is a big part of like the plot twist in Final Fantasy VII, the original, is that Cloud isn't who he thought he was. He was basically a typical infantry soldier, and then this Zack was who Cloud thought he was. Who Cloud thought himself was, and basically Cloud and Zack were friends, and they both got experimented on, but then Zack gets killed, and it's a really like emotional, powerful scene when Zack dies. He takes on like all these soldiers and gets killed, and then he passes on his sword to Cloud, like the big Buster sword. Right. Cloud has, because that was actually Zack's sword. Passes it on to Cloud, and then Cloud then wanders into Midgard just aimlessly because he's sort of still suffering from this like poisoning and all of this. And from there, he sort of tries to piece together his memories, and where he has these gaps, he sort of takes Zack's life and merges it with his own. And so it's all just this really confusing thing. But anyway, and so after you kill these Harbingers of Fate, it shows Zack, and it shows the scene where he dies, but he survives. So it's kind of like an alternate timeline kind of thing. Because he obviously doesn't survive in the timeline of the game because Cloud's there with the sword and everything. And then all this stuff happens. Then it ends, and it says the unknown journey will continue.
Whoa.
So it's basically what you realise at the end is that these whisperers were there trying to make sure that the characters followed the same path as the original storyline.
Right.
So that's where it's kind of quite clever and metaphoric or whatever. But so these whisperers were there to try and make sure this original storyline, the path of that stayed true. That's why when Barrett got killed, he got resurrected by them. And there's a point where this scientist is about to reveal to Cloud his history, which would have been way earlier than the original. And these whisperers come in, whisk him away, so he can't say anything else. Oh. So now that they're gone, it's sort of basically saying that, you know, it's now a completely new path, and it's going to be completely different.
Wow.
So
that's really cool.
So I've tried to explain it without, because the problem is with Final Fantasy VII is there's so many story beats that are relevant to this. And I mean, if you haven't played the original, then they wouldn't be. But to properly explain the reason the ending's so divisive and strange, you have to sort of try and go off on these tangents to try and explain all these other things, and I think that's where it's very divisive, because it just overcomplicates things, and it's just it was just a lot to take in, really, a lot to sort of digest. So yeah, I can see why a lot of people were a bit miffed, because you know, people have been expecting a remake of a story they love, and they might not now be getting that. It'll be the same world, same characters, obviously, but it's not necessarily gonna follow the same beat. And I think the fact that you see Zack alive at the end is really rubbing people the wrong way, because his death is like one of the real powerful, like, emotional scenes from Final Fantasy VII, from that sort of lore. And so for people to see that, I think a lot of people just see it as like a big middle finger to the fans who have been waiting for this, which I understand, but at the same time, you know, I'm quite excited to see this new direction they take it in. So yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely going to go down as, you know, one of the biggest, like, what the fuck moments in games, but you know, it's hopefully going to come good, and all we can do now is wait and see what they do.
Yeah, no, that's pretty interesting to hear, especially with you have the harbingers.
Yeah, something like that.
Whisper guys, I'm gonna call them the Whisper guys.
Yeah.
I like that idea, because that gives them the ability to acknowledge the traditional storyline and then deviate and give you a reason why it changes in the first place, because you kill them or remove them. That's super interesting. And the fact that they end it with that other dude being alive, do you think, is there a way for them to interact where they both exist, or would they alternate between the reality where Zack is alive and then Cloud is alive?
So that's what's very confusing. So when you see Zack alive, because just for a little bit of clarity, there's a game called Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, which came out on PSP, and that is kind of like a prequel to Final Fantasy VII. It ends literally just where Final Fantasy VII begins, and that follows Zack and Cloud and Sephiroth, because those three were sort of fought together. And it just basically goes more into detail with this. And there's a cutscene, and the cutscene from Crisis Core is the cutscene where Zack dies, and it just adds this huge, like, emotional thing to it, because it's PSP games had fairly decent graphics, and the cutscene is a good, really good sort of ending scene to watch. And they basically recreate that scene at the end. But yeah, he survives, and then they're sort of the characters who you're controlling in the game, because you just come out of Midgar now. They're basically walking where he sort of is in this alternate timeline but survived. So they like walk past each other, but obviously in different timelines or different universes, whatever. So I can't imagine. I'm imagining that in this timeline that you play in the remake, that Zack does die how he did before, because otherwise I don't know how Cloud would have his sword.
That's true.
But yeah, it's very confusing, and you know, everyone now really doesn't know what this means. And yeah, but like you said, I think to sort of come away and look at it from the perspective that, you know, they've written in these new enemies that are basically a metaphor for change. They're basically a metaphor that they're trying to keep this story on the same rails as the original, but they've now freed themselves from that story.
Right.
To look at it from that perspective, it is quite clever, and it's very submersive, so it's sort of like, or subversive, so it's really sort of taking people by surprise, which I think is cool because it adds just some discussion to it, and it's such a big remake. It just adds some flavor to it and adds some excitement and buzz, and is really gonna love it. Like I said, love it or hate it, people are gonna be looking out for what this means for the next part. So it's really grown on me. I'm really excited to see what happens now.
Now, do you think that, and we'll have to wait years, I imagine, to see this actually come to life, but like, do they now create this option to remake more than just 7, maybe 8, because they're creating an alternate path for all the games to now go down? Do you think that's a possibility, or really they just want to give these different scenarios for the 7 remake?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that because they've got Tetsuya Nomura writing it, who did Kingdom Hearts and the original Final Fantasy VII. They've also got some other original writers from the original game. So I feel like it might just be that, because I'd imagine if you write something as big as Final Fantasy VII, you'd probably, with the years that pass, you'd probably be like, what if this happened instead? What if I did this differently? What if this character did this? And I'm sure there's many ideas they scrapped for other ones, and so I don't know whether it's just them wanting to take this world and just take it in a different direction, or just add things that they wanted to add to it, or add these pipeline dreams that they've had over the years after the original one came out. Because as much as I don't think the original Final Fantasy VII is the strongest one, I think it definitely has the most interesting story and interesting world to really pull apart and flesh out. So I don't know, in terms of remaking other Final Fantasies, because I'd like to see a Final Fantasy 16 next, or whether they're going to do Final Fantasy 7 Remake 2 next or whatever. But you do sort of wonder whether how many of these can they make, and what would they have to sacrifice to make them. But in terms of Final Fantasy 8 and 9, I think have aged. I mean, Final Fantasy 9 certainly. I mean, I could play that, the remake for that on PS, or the remaster on PS4 for that, and it's fine. I mean, that came out just before PS2, so it's not too bad to look at, and it plays really well. And then the 2D Final Fantasies, I think because they're 2D, they'll just forever be okay to play and look at.
Right.
So I think Final Fantasy 7, for quite a lot of reasons, not just the fact that it has a really good story that wasn't able to maybe be told in a way that it should have been, but also because it has aged horribly. But yeah, I mean, I'd be happy with any Final Fantasy remake. I love them. I love them all, and especially the older ones. And to see them remade like this would be awesome. But yeah, I don't know if it'd be quite a lot to sort of take in, especially if they did sort of different story routes for each one.
Yeah, it's interesting because we are in a different time now where these remakes are now possible. They come out and they're actually really good. So, but it doesn't also mean that we have to then go chronologically for all these. Like even with, we'll talk about RE4 and RE3 remakes. It's like, it doesn't necessarily have to be go in line now with every game that came out in its proper order and remake those. Like sometimes you have to tackle the ones that have the most demand or deserve it the most. Like it doesn't always have to be, you have to start from the beginning, go to the end. It's like, and also financially, they have to pick the ones that are going to sell the best too, to actually remake in the first place.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. And I think, Final Fantasy VII is the most financially attractive game for them to remake as well. I mean, it's probably the most popular Final Fantasy. Right. That and 10, I'd probably say. But yeah, it's a tough one. I'm sure that it's a conversation they'd have about remaking the other ones. But I mean, if I was to see one remade, I'd love to see 6 remade, because that is just such an awesome story as well, and that has probably my favorite villain from Final Fantasy in it, called Kefka, who's like a clown jester, and he basically kills his own emperor, and then just becomes like this, like really, he's like one of those villains that is just evil for no reason, a bit like the Joker. Like, gotcha. He's just so evil that he doesn't even have like like a reason, and
Right.
that sort of makes him even more evil. But yeah, so I'd love to see Final Fantasy 6, but again, that's just like a fantasy, really. It's I'm happy with what they've done with the remake. I'm happy to see what they bring out next, and I'm hoping that the way they've handled this game in terms of its gameplay and how it plays, how they've done the combat system, how they've done just the general game systems and how you level up. I'm hoping that that is a good thing, a good thing to sort of look at for the next Final Fantasy mainline game 16. I'm hoping that they will, go more down this line of letting the story dictate how linear or open world the game is, and just really designing the combat system as well as they did, because 15 was just such a different game. It just didn't feel like Final Fantasy at all, whereas this really does.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, it seems like across the board, it's been not only critically acclaimed, it's selling well. People are really digging it, so it's a great just burst or boost to the franchise itself. To have this thing out there now.
Yeah, and I mean, and there's so many other things that I could gush about, and it's just one of those games. I just can't recommend it enough. It is so impressive. It's really special. The soundtrack is just amazing. The way the story's told is brilliant, and even for a Japanese localized game, even the performances are good. And I mean, there's some things that with NPCs where lines are a bit strange or don't really sort of fit very well, but I mean, in terms of the main cast, I'd say like 90% of the cutscenes and the acting and everything, it seems really good and really powerful and tells the story really well, which is hard to do with a sort of native Japanese game. So yeah, I mean, I just can't recommend it enough. Even it doesn't feel like a JRPG; it feels like an action RPG, which is probably why you enjoyed the demo.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is a really special game. And yeah, it is very good. And the change to the story means that I don't think that you have to play the original before playing the remake, or vice versa. I think it would help. It'd help you understand the ending and all the buzz about it. But I mean, it is on its own. It is just such an excellent game.
Gotcha. Nice. Yeah. I don't know if I'll ever jump in, but it's all positive things that I'm hearing, good things that I'm hearing. Yeah. So that's really great. Yeah, Callum, sweet. So we'll continue on some of these news articles we have here. Well, let's talk about some PS5 news. We got this breakdown, this article from Bloomberg. So Takashi Mochizuki has the article here. It's Sony plans limited PlayStation 5 output in first year. So I'll go through some of the details, and there's some bullet points there, just kind of revealing what Sony's thinking with the next few months here. So Sony Corp plans to produce far fewer units of its upcoming PlayStation 5 in its first year than it had for the previous generation console's launch, according to people familiar with the matter. The global COVID-19 pandemic has affected Sony's promotional plans for the new device, but not its production capacity, they added. The company has told assembly partners it will make 5 to 6 million units of the PS5 in the fiscal year ending March 2021, according to other people involved in the machine's supply chain. When Sony released the PlayStation 4 in November 2013, it sold 7.5 million units in its first 2 quarters. So Sony's strategy, according to several people familiar with its plans, will be to rely on incumbent PlayStation 4 models as a bridge to get new users into the PlayStation platform's network services while the PS5 remains in limited supply. Recently, it was forced to reveal its DualSense PS5 controller in a hurried fashion, according to people informed in the matter. While only a small circle within Sony are privy to the appearance of the PS5 console, the controller has been shared with outside developers, and the company feared it couldn't control leaks, they said. So some of the bullet points. So price expected to be at $500. I'm hearing other people interpret it as $550, but around $500. Manufacturing is more expensive than anticipated. Still set on launching in 2020, though COVID impacted reveal plans. And PS5 manufacturing begins in June. So it just reveals a bit more of the car. It's not officially, but like behind the scenes. I find it interesting that the only reason why they showed off the controller in the way they did was because they're afraid of it leaking. But it was kind of a brilliant way to show it off and drum up support and buzz. What's also interesting, so I'm going to highlight this. So the company plans to make 5 to 6 million units for the PS5 in the first year. They sold way more than that in just the first 2 quarters of PS4. So I'm wondering if we'll see a super high demand when this thing drops. Although the next ripple or wrinkle is the fact that it might be more of an expensive console. PS4 was $400 out of the gate. PS5 could be $500, $550. So there might not be that much of a demand. But what do you think about some of these revealing notes here?
Yeah, I think it looks, to be honest, like, when we talked about whether or not the PS5 is going to be delayed, it looked like we were probably hitting maybe the right notes in what we were saying, because it sounds like, again, Sony aren't expecting to sell that many PlayStation 5s at first anyway, which goes back to the thing they said, about a year and a half or 2 years ago, where they said that when the PS5 does come out, they're still going to expect that the PS4 will be their main source of revenue for the first year or so. So this just mirrors that. Yep. And, it could be why they're not worried about delaying it, because if they already are expecting to produce a lot less units and they're not expecting to make as much money from the PS5, then they wouldn't have too much reason to delay it, because if people can't afford it, then that's what they're going to be anticipating anyway. They're not anticipating a lot of sales anyway, so it could be to do with that is why they're not talking about delaying the console.
Yeah, I think they have a lot more wiggle room now. With everyone has basically a PS4. It sold gangbusters this generation, so maybe they even drop the price a bit, and that's usually what they do anyways with the new console launches.
Yeah,
they drop the last models down a bit. So if you can drop those models down in price and then try and offer more subscriptions and kind of create that bridge they're talking about, so that it gives a PS5 a bit more room to slowly build up to, and there's not this big expectation out of the gate that they have to sell as much as PS4 did.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure they're gonna advertise the hell out of it on the PlayStation 4s as well when it comes out.
Yeah, any footage we see, it's gonna be PS5 before it's PS4 footage. Just to.
Oh, definitely, yeah. But yeah, I think it just goes back to what they said a year or so ago, when they said that they were already expecting the PS4 to still be their main revenue. So it just seems like they're just being very lax about it, which may or may not be a bad thing. But they just seem to be very relaxed and showing what they want to show, and only making 5 to 6 million units, and
yeah, it's just like, oh, whatever, man, we'll get there.
So I don't know. It's I still wouldn't be surprised if they did end up being delayed, but everything just seems to be adding up to that they just simply are just going to release it and allow their sort of like schedule to continue as normal, and then just take the hit on less sales.
Right. And I would implore everyone to read this. There's further details in this Bloomberg article. They do go into depth on some of the decisions behind the scenes where PS5 isn't willing to delay until they hear something from Microsoft. So really, they're going to keep going as long as forward with plans. But if they hear that Microsoft will delay, then they'll delay too. But I think everyone's kind of like not willing to show their cards and seeing who flinches first and that kind of thing. But I think you're right. There's not an issue of it coming out and the worry of it selling less when we're in a weird time now. So you can just slowly launch this console, and then people adopt it, jump on as they can, and we'll it's not this huge pressure to like sell as much right out of the gate as a PS4. We're just in a different time. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. It's also interesting that they didn't plan on really showing the controller as early as they did. I feel like that was a fair amount of time. If we're to expect PS5 by this fall season, I feel like it was fair to show it now. But if they weren't initially going to do that, when were they planning on showing this controller?
Yeah, right. Yeah. It is quite funny that we all take the mick and say that they're not showing anything, and then when they do finally show something, they didn't even want to show it anyway.
Yeah, I want to hear, I want to understand what behind the scenes, what their actual plan was, and maybe everything's thrown out of whack because of the Corona stuff. They don't have their live event they would have where they'd show it off to people. But even with that, it's like they're still very, very secretive, and meanwhile Xbox is just showing everything off. So it's just kind of such a different take on these launches.
Yeah, it really is.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens with that. I do think we'll get more and more information in these next few weeks.
What do you think about the expected price as well of $500 to $550?
See, I feel like that's fair. If technically the PS4 Pro is still $400 like retail, you can find it for cheaper than that. But if that's still the retail price, $400, I feel like $500 is still fair. Even the sweet spot I keep hearing is $400, but it's a different console, kind of thing now. Like these are really beefy machines. They're supposedly able to do a lot more, and there's also inflation, there's stuff like that, so it's kind of hard to expect it to still be at that traditional retail what the PS4 released at. So I feel like it's fair. And then with a lot of these games being cross-gen, you can still, if you have your regular PS4, you can still use that. You can still be a participant in this like weird window of next gen and not have to jump in. And so you give all these options, and I think that's good.
Yeah, and people are more than happy to pay at least $1,000 for a mobile phone, which they'll pay for 3 years and then get another one for another $1,000. Whereas these consoles last 6-7 years.
Right.
So I think it's a steal. I mean, I'm not saying it's cheap. It's of course not cheap, but it's just perspective. I mean, if people are happy to pay $30-$40 a month or however much it is for a phone, then there's price plans like that you can do to pay for anything. So I mean, for example, you got like PayPal credit, which you could buy a PlayStation 5 on with that and then pay it off with no interest at all. So it'd even be a better deal than it would be for when you're paying for a phone. And again, it's still a lot of money, and I don't even know if I'll be able to even afford it when it comes out. But you can't. The people who say it's too expensive are probably tweeting that from their $1,200 iPhone X or whatever.
Yeah, we live in a different time where I mean that's the reality of phones, and no one really blinks an eye with that. These are you're right.
Well, they never talk about. They never like market the price of a phone. It's never, oh, this is a new iPhone, it's $1,200.
Right.
It's always, this is a new iPhone, you can get it for £45 a month or $45 a month or whatever. It's just seeing the numbers, isn't it? And it's like you're more likely to buy something for $39.99 than $40 because you see the 3 in the first, and it's just like that. And I just don't. And for something as powerful as the PlayStation 5 is going to be, and how long it's going to last you, and how much you're going to use it, because I'm sure people will use it for, it's going to be a 4K Blu-ray player.
Right.
You'll be able to watch Netflix on it. You'll be able to do sort of all sorts of things on it. So yeah, $550 is a steal for that.
It also reminds me like we're trying to convince our parents, hey, look, it plays this, it does that. I'm going to play it for 8 years.
Please buy me one.
It's an investment. That's the same argument I have with my mom like growing up. It's like, hey, look, I can sit on it.
It'll keep me quiet.
It's funny because we live in a world where, I mean, that phone industry, I think early they adopted this along with the carriers, the biggest cell phone carriers. They adopted this normality where you pay monthly for the thing, so you don't worry about how much it actually costs, because they just tack a percentage on your bill and then you just keep things moving forward. So, but it's different with consoles because you have to buy a couple $100s all at once. But now if they're slowly adopting this model of like, hey, just pay monthly incrementally. Like I know Xbox did this promotion. It was a small promotion, but in the States they had, if you were next to a Microsoft store, you could get an Xbox One on a payment plan. And I happened to be in Portland, and that was the closest one we had, and I was there for that time, and I did that. I bought a Xbox One, and it was like $30 a month, and it was there was like zero financing or whatever, so there was no it was just the payments that I paid off, and it was just a way to jump in, and it came with like Xbox Game Pass too. And so the more they do that, they can take the stink off of it being $600 if you're paying per month. So I hope they kind of lean into that option more.
Yeah, and I mean, so many. You can do it for anything really. I mean, I remember when I first moved out to like my first like flat, and I was young and had no money or anything, and we needed a TV. So we went to this big like store and bought a TV, and sort of they were doing buy now pay later, which is like a huge thing now.
Yeah.
Where you buy it and then you have 6 months to pay it, and no interest or anything.
Right.
I think you have to pay like 10% deposit or whatever. And I mean, all the PC parts I normally buy, I normally either use, again, PayPal credit, or I'll stick it on a buy now, pay later finance thing. And then forget about it and pay it monthly for 3 years at a ridiculous interest.
Right. I think that's what they bank on, is people going, oh, I'll pay it off, and then they don't. They're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. But I mean, even then, it's like you pay like £12 a month for a couple of years, and you still, you can always. I think people don't realize this as well. Is you can still pay off the amount at no interest. The interest is worked out every month, so as long as you pay it monthly, you're paying interest, but you can still pay off big chunks off of the amount and lessen the time or whatever. So I mean, I think nowadays there's just so many different ways to be catered to financially.
Yep.
And that's for a $550 thing. I mean, most of the time you don't even do payment plans for things at that price. You normally, well, I mean, I say that, but I'd probably still put it on a credit card or something. But you know what I mean? I mean, normally it is something like a piece of furniture.
Yeah, refrigerator, like the 2,000, 3,000, like it's getting to those bigger amounts traditionally.
And this is much more important than a refrigerator.
Yeah, I agree. Alrighty, Callum. Well, we'll see what happens. I'm sure in the next couple of weeks we'll be getting more and more information. I kind of think we're in that swing of promotion. I say that, but it could still be come.
I think August, we say it every week, but right. It still is though. I mean, it's gonna be until we see it.
Yeah.
From now until they really do show something, it really could be any time now.
Right. And really, what we're in April. Time is so weird right now, so I had to really think what month it is.
Yeah.
We're in April. I think end of May, June is usually that E3 time. So within these next month and a half is when we should expect them to have their own. They're going to have their own digital events, but I would feel like they'd still stay within that E3 time frame when they reveal stuff.
Yeah, you'd hope so.
Yes, I hope so. So we'll see what happens with that. But our next article here is, this actually dropped right after we were talking about playing RE4. So this is interesting. So Capcom is working on a Resident Evil 4 remake. So the article here is from VGC.com. Andy Robinson has the details. Capcom has greenlit a Resident Evil 4 remake. Following its reimaginings of Resident Evil 2 and 3, multiple development sources have told VGC that the Resident Evil 4 remake has now entered full production with an estimated release window of 2022. Development is being led by Osaka-based M2, the new studio founded by former Platinum Games head Tatsuya Minami, and has the blessing of original director Shinji Mikami. This team is noticeably larger than the RE3 remake. Coinciding with the new remake's larger development team is support from the teams behind Resident Evil 2 and Devil May Cry 5, which are internal Capcom teams. Furthermore, many developers who worked on the original Resident Evil 4 will be hands-on with the game's remake, including Hiroyuki Kobayashi, Mega Man 11, Koichi Kakai, Devil May Cry 5, and Koyoki Sakata, who was the game director for the Resident Evil 3 remake at Redworks. I'm sure I butchered those names, so just apologize for that. RE3 Remake sold 2 million units in its first 5 days. Just a couple days ago, 50% of the sales were digital. So it seems inevitable that now we're moving on to RE5. How do you feel about them tackling this versus the next actual entry, which was Code Veronica and other Resident Evil games? Do you think it makes the most sense to jump right into RE4?
So I think immediately I think it's quite. I don't know how to feel about how it's not being developed in-house. It's by that new studio. I think it's quite cool because I heard about the new studio being founded and I was wondering what they were going to make. So this is quite cool that this is it. You'd imagine it's because Resident Evil 4 is a little bit more action-based. It's a completely different kind of flow to the other Resident Evil games. So and some of the credentials of some of the people there are much more action-orientated games. Platinum Games themselves,
sure.
Bayonetta and things like that. But yeah, I think it's great. I understand that a lot of people are miffed about it. You'd imagine that Capcom will now focus on RE8 or whether or not they will still do another remake or whatever. But yeah, I think the thing with Resident Evil 4 is it looks so good, but it doesn't play as well as people remember or think. And I mean, and that was something that, I mean, because just from speaking to you and hearing that, you know, you find it quite antiquated to how it plays, and I've heard some other people say that as well. Without hearing that, I would be in the boat of, why is it being remade? It doesn't need to be remade. But, you know, after speaking to some people and realizing that, you know, it might just be because I know the game so well, and can play it, you know, like you know, like I've played it all the other times. I think sometimes you just need to take a step back and look at it from the perspective of people who haven't experienced this. I mean, we will now have a full generation of people who probably haven't touched Resident Evil 4, because of how long ago it came out now, who are sort of getting to that age where, you know, that they might be enjoying these Resident Evil remakes, and they maybe have never played Resident Evil 4, and and they wouldn't be able to go back and play them, especially not after these remakes, because it is just very antiquated in how it plays. But yeah, I that being said, I don't have high hopes for it. I don't think it will probably be quite as good as these other remakes, because Resident Evil 4 really is probably like a once in a lifetime kind of thing. I mean, it's just, there's just something about it that is, I just don't think can be replicated, and I think it is a lot to do with how it looks. I think it just has this aesthetic about it that I just don't think can be replicated. And I even thinking of that kind of setting in the new RE engine, and, you know, lovely lighting and amazing textures, I just don't think that would do anything for it. I don't think that nobody would be like, oh, look how amazing Leon and this village looks in Unreal Engine 4, I think they use. I just think that is one thing that Resi 4 really has got like nailed down. It has such a unique style and aesthetic. It's got this really like kind of like an autumn kind of like feel to it.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that that could be replicated in a remake. So I don't have high hopes for it, but I'm excited because hopefully it just gets more eyes on the original. And to be honest, I said when Resident Evil 2 first came out, I'd be really interested to see how this new rebooted Leon, how he is in Resident Evil 4, because in Resident Evil 4 he's like a complete badass compared to how he is in Resident Evil 2. So it'd just be quite cool to see that Leon sort of develop and grow and see how he is, because the Leon that we had to see develop and grow was the really pixelated polygonal Leon from the original RE2, and then we got this, you know, Resident Evil 4 Leon who, you know, looked good. So yeah, I think there'll definitely be some interesting things to compare and note, but yeah, I doubt it will quite reach the heights of the original. I think where 2 and 3 have probably surpassed the games they're remaking, I think Resident Evil 4 is a completely different beast, and I just don't think that it can be replicated at all or bested with a remake.
Yeah, I mean, I for the most part, I don't know if I disagree or I'm just ready for a remake. Something about I'm playing the original, and there's moments where you have to deal with the daughter where I'm like, hey, bring in that remake now. I don't care if it's ready. I want to play that. But and I give the game a lot of shit, but really it's an amazing game. Like, it's still super addicting, where even though those parts aren't as fun, I'm still glued to the screen. I still want to complete it. See, the story is so batshit nuts and wonky. I love that about it. The characters are super weird, very cheesy. Leon's very cheesy, but that's also part of the charm. You're right that the game aged visually very well. It looks really, really good. I'm playing on PS3. It looks awesome. There's like PC versions that kind of slightly up-res it, but you don't really have to do a lot to it because it still holds its own. Was it 2005? I want to say 2004 when it actually released. So no, it holds its own. It would I imagine it would look even more beautiful if they redid it in the engine for sure. But there's a lot of trust required in this team to understand the soul of it and to keep those things alive. And if they're gonna add features or remove features, then they have to make sense for that game. I'm really interested in them adjusting the movement. One thing with the movement is it's very tanky, and I guess that's supposedly what kind of keeps the fear instilled in you, the fact that you can't move as fast as you would like. I mean, you can still do that quick turnaround, but I think that adds to some of the fear is your movement. But we've proven, or they've proven in the remakes, the RE3 and RE2, you can add fluid movement but still make it terrifying. You can maybe remove or reduce some of the ammo that you have. You could do little things to improve it. I feel like with the villagers too, like the AI in the villagers is really good. The way they flank you, the way they come from behind, like keep doing that. I feel like they could lean into that AI for the villagers as far as an improvement.
I definitely agree that I don't think the standing still whilst aiming is necessary anymore. I don't think that's something. I think that for people who maybe don't share like a not a nostalgic sort of love for the game, but just like a love for the game from when they played it, because it's probably a product of its time, but I think the time that it's a product of is a lot bigger than, say, Final Fantasy VII, for example. So I think that maybe became antiquated a lot quicker, but I just think that Resident Evil 4, it just carries a certain mood about it that I just don't think I can't think of any other game. And whilst, like Dead Space, for example, I prefer that as a game to Resident Evil 4, I'd still think Resident Evil 4 is I'd probably hold that closer to my heart, just because it just I just don't even know what it is about it. And I know that fans of the game share similar feelings, that there's just something about it that it just can't be I just don't see how it can be replicated, because it's just one of those games that just feels a certain way, not necessarily to play, but just when you're playing it makes you feel a certain way. And I'm just not sure. I mean, I could be totally wrong, and they could completely nail that feel and get it down, but I just don't see how they're going to remake this game and make it better than the original, because I mean that's always has to be the goal, to make it to not only remake it in better quality but make it better than the original, because I mean every game is not perfect, or no game's perfect, so there's always ways to improve. But I think that where you could improve on imperfections of Resident Evil 4, you can never ever improve on its like overall feel and its overall mood. And I think that that's what people have issue with, just that they feel that games would benefit more than Resident Evil 4 would, which I do understand. But again, I love remakes. I'm happy to see them, because if Resident Evil 4 Remake comes out and it's it's disappointing or not as good as the original's still there. And if people are so divided because they're like, oh, it doesn't need a remake, then that even more power to them, because they can just play the original if it's held up that well. So it's a very interesting one. It's I'm excited, but yeah, I just I love Resident Evil 4 so much, and it's so special. I just don't know how. I just can't foresee them surpassing it.
Yeah, I hear you on that, and I guess I wouldn't have as much faith as I do in if we lived in a world where the RE2 and RE3 didn't happen first, and if they just came out of the gate, out of the blue, saying, "Hey, we're going to remake RE4," then I would share some of that outrage. But seeing how they nailed it for the first two, and it's a different team, I feel like they realize the pressure, and I think they can nail it. It's going to be tough. But and also I'm wanting something else out of it. Like I have the nostalgia with. I remember it being such a huge game in Juggernaut, but I never got to play it at that original time. And so for me, I just see all these different things I could see change. Like I'm coming in to your household, like your family home, and I'm saying, look, change this, remove the wallpaper, knock down this wall. That's how I'm coming in. But you're like, but I learned to walk here, I learned to talk here. It's like,
of course, yeah.
So I'm just coming in saying like, hey, just blow up this house.
Wait, I feel similar to how I feel about the Last of Us series. It's like I'm glad it's happening, with Resident Evil 4 Remake. I'm glad it's happening for the people who don't find the original as accessible as others, and didn't get a chance to play it, or are from a newer generation who definitely wouldn't want to play that. So I do appreciate that, and I do think it does have a place, which I think a lot of people don't think it does, but I disagree. I think it does definitely have a place, and it could definitely be remade and find an audience. But I just personally don't think I could enjoy a Resident Evil 4 remake as much as the original, whereas all the other remakes I've played, the RE2 and 3, the Final Fantasy 7 remake, I've enjoyed them more than their original games they're remaking, and I just don't think I will for this one.
Gotcha. I hear you. We'll see what happens with that, but we still got a bit of a wait, which is good. That also makes me feel pretty good about it. It's 2022 is when they're estimated to release that, so we'll see. Do you think another wrinkle in this is, do you think they go only next gen with this new project? By 2022, we'll be 2 years into next gen. Will they bother with a current gen release?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point. I mean, it depends, I suppose, on... I think maybe the whole virus thing at the moment may have an impact on it, but I mean, that engine is so versatile. That being said, we've only really seen it in very contained games. Right. Even RE7 was, even though you go to different places, they're very contained portions of levels. And even RE3 with Raccoon City, it still feels very, it still feels very contained. And it feels like they've efficiently built, the levels around you. Right. Whereas RE4, there's a huge, I mean... You'd have to hope that they would go for the same direction, because I think to even have a chance of making it anywhere near as good as the original, they'd have to include all the backtracking that's in it, all the multiple routes, all the different things you can do in it. So I don't know. I mean, it'd be interesting to see how RE Engine fares with a completely different beast like that. But yeah, I mean, I'd imagine that in 2 years' time, PS4 will still be pretty highly used, especially with how Sony are looking at it. Yeah, but I mean, but in a selfish way, I'd like it to be a PlayStation 5 exclusive, or not an exclusive, but exclusive to next gen, just in case they would have to, hang back on certain aspects so that a current gen release would be possible.
Right. Yeah, we'll see what happens with that. So we have some other PlayStation stories here. Some of these are just more interesting, and I know you went to Gamescom recently. I want to say that was one of the actual live events you went to. So this is some info on Gamescom, their plans. Gamescom will go ahead, at least in a digital format. This is Wesley LeBlanc and Joe Screbbles of IGN. Following the announcement earlier Wednesday, April 15th, from the German government stating all major events will be banned from occurring until August 31st, Gamescom has officially announced their 2020 event will take place digitally. So this is a tweet from Gamescom from their main account. Even though not all details are known at present, the nationwide ban on major events until the end of August will also affect the planning for Gamescom 2020. Furthermore, Gamescom 2020 will definitely take place digitally. We will provide further information shortly. What do you think about that? You've attended this event. How do you feel about them? What could they really do or provide in a digital version of that physical event?
I really don't know. I don't know whether it means that certain demos will come out or something and maybe have Gamescom attached to it, or... I mean, I'm not at all excited for a digital Gamescom. I mean, I get that it has to be. I mean, I knew it would be cancelled, but yeah, I mean, I'm not excited really. I'm not really too excited for a digital version, because the thing with Gamescom is it's the area. I mean, Cologne, Germany is just an amazing place. It's just cool to go and see like the hundreds of thousands of people there. It's just a cool experience. And so, yeah, so I don't think they could really, for me personally, I don't think they could replicate anything digitally that, would entice me to tune in or whatever. I mean, I'm sure that they'll just release the trailers and the announcements that happen there digital. But yeah, I mean, it's a cool idea. I think it's nice that they're doing something in place of it. But yeah, it's not, I mean, to me, it's just, I won't be able to, go on my holiday that I go on every year, which is sad. But yeah, gotta do what you gotta do, and it's cool, like I said, that they're at least trying something in place of it.
Do you think they could have like a Zoom call with all the hundreds of thousands of people on one screen and then a trailer on one side?
Hell. It's already hellish enough with the amount of people that go anyway.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, we're in a different time, and all these things get canceled. Makes sense. It still sucks, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, so the next thing, this is more of a weird story. This is yesterday. So PS4 exclusives listed for PC on Amazon are in error. So I saw this unfold on Twitter yesterday morning, where it was just one after the other, different outlets going, oh, Last of Us is listed as PC on Amazon France, and then it kept going, like Days Gone, Bloodborne, PC version. I was like, what the hell's going on? So there's some more info on this. IGN writes, earlier today, listing for several games, including PlayStation 4 exclusives, were listed for PC on a French Amazon page. Sony has confirmed to IGN that the listing isn't accurate. A series of listings on Amazon France seemingly suggested exclusive PlayStation 4 games like Days Gone, Bloodborne, and The Last of Us 2 were coming to PC. However, Sony responded to the request from IGN that listings are not accurate. We have made no announcements to bring these games to PC. I don't know if you got to see this happen or what was going on behind the scenes. Somebody at Amazon France was just, getting fired that day. So they're like, you know what? I'm just blasting these different things online.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that with the current time of it, it could be, somebody losing their job and doing that. I mean, it could be, I don't know how the back end of Amazon's sort of like websites work. I mean, it could be like quite an easy mistake to make, or, somebody just not quite realizing. I mean, it could be somebody who's in charge of updating the store page who isn't at all into games and didn't even realize what they were doing. I think Sony saying that the poo-pooing the rumor, I think is reason enough to believe that they're not coming, because when the rumors of Horizon happened, Sony were dead quiet.
That's true.
So I think that the fact they've come out and squashed these rumors probably do confirm they were just rumors. But yeah, I didn't see about Bloodborne and Last of Us, but yeah, I saw something about Days Gone, like an article saying it looks like Days Gone's coming to PC.
Right.
And I wouldn't have been surprised about that one, to be fair.
No, I would agree.
Just because similar to Horizon, Days Gone's like a new series that could again entice people over to PS5. But yeah, I wouldn't imagine Bloodborne, and I wouldn't imagine they would get rid of Bloodborne and Last of Us 2, just because Bloodborne's very like on its own and a big pull, because I mean the people love those games, and obviously Last of Us 2 speaks for itself. But yeah, so looks like I doubt they will be coming to PC. They've already got Horizon, so.
Yeah, I think there's we find this every once in a while, every couple of months, where something will be listed on a site, on a retail site, as often just like a placeholder. Like, hey, we need this for, I guess, whenever it does eventually come. Like, we'll find this a lot with next-gen games. So, like, you'll see a listing for Halo 6 or whatever, and it's on Amazon, it's on Walmart.com. But it's really not that it's been confirmed. They just have these things ready, so when there is pre-orders, they just have the spot already on the website. And then sometimes it's actually where it does premiere there first, because there is a plan to reveal this thing in the next coming days, and then it drops. But it's most likely they're just creating these placeholders, and that's not really what's going on. So like Mario's confirmed for PC or whatever, something like that. But it was just kind of funny to see this unfold. And then there's a bunch of memes of people just saying like, oh, this and that, Vita's coming to PC, like all this other stuff. Like people were just jumping on and making fun of it. But, yeah, so we got another PlayStation news article here. This is just a couple of days they announced this. So PlayStation to offer Uncharted, Nathan Drake Collection, and Journey for free for a limited time. This is a PlayStation Play at Home initiative. Also includes a $10 million fund for indie developers. This is Anna Bankhurst of IGN. So PlayStation President Jim Ryan revealed the details of the $10 million fund and free games on PlayStation blog, but also said more information and participation criteria will be revealed at a later date for those developers looking to take advantage of it. Independent developers are vital to the heart and soul of the gaming community, and we understand the hardships and financial struggles that many smaller gaming studios are facing, Ryan said. As far as the games, Journey and Uncharted, the Nathan Drake Collection, will be free for all PS4 players, not just those who with PlayStation Plus, from April 15th to May 5th. To, quote, help keep the PlayStation community entertained at home. It's important to note that once you redeem the games, they're yours to keep for forever. It's pretty cool. I mean, there's some free games for everybody. I was hoping that some of these bigger outlets, or, like Microsoft, Sony, would say, hey, here's PlayStation Network for free, for a month or 2 months, because everyone's locked at home. But this is something good. It's a positive thing.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, because you don't often think about people who don't have PlayStation Plus, so they don't get... Because I saw a lot of people, groaning that, these games were on PlayStation Plus, and it's like, yeah, but not everyone has PlayStation Plus. Not everyone gets access to these games, these free games every month. So yeah, I think it's a really, really amazing thing to do. And it's not just, and a lot of people are talking about how it's two, it's four. That's 4 games. That's 3 Uncharted games, all absolute blockbusters of games. Amazing titles to play when you're at home as well. Journey's meant to be, I haven't played Journey, but it's meant to be awesome.
Journey's really good. I just recently played Journey like a year ago, and it's actually really, really good.
Yeah, I've heard it's really awesome, and the fact that they're theirs to keep forever is just, I think it's a really, really cool initiative. And the $10 million fund for indie developers is awesome as well. It's really like looking out for, the people in their industry. So yeah, I think it's just an all round really nice thing for PlayStation to do.
Yep. Same here. So, Cal, we'll end on this last story, and we'll let you go. We're running a little long in the tooth today, but it was really just you rambling about Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So we got 18 months after Red Dead Redemption 2, Rockstar has made big cultural changes. So this is Jason Schreier of Kotaku. The article itself is super long. I implore everyone to go read it. I'll just take a blurb from it and some of the bullet points. So Rockstar appear to be having a positive impact on the company. I didn't copy and paste that right. Rockstar's changes appear to be having a positive impact on the company. There have been high-profile changes at the top, including the departure earlier this year of co-founder Dan Houser, but the heads of Rockstar Studios in California and Lincoln, England, have also been replaced, as have other executives who were allegedly contributing to the negative culture. One employee interviewed for the report said management is now running the company like a company, while another said it seems like a healthier culture overall. So this is in reference to right when Red Dead 2 dropped, there was this big article also from Kotaku from inside people within the company talking about the negative crunch stuff and just negative culture that was going on. And they seem to have been trying to curb it, change it, which is good. I don't know if they had to wait for all these people at the top to leave before they could. Maybe that's the case because it happened right after that. But they're trying to change their culture of crunch. But also they talked a little bit about their plans for GTA 6. So Rockstar's next game is Grand Theft Auto 6. It's still very early in development, years away. It's currently targeting a more moderate, less ambitious scope that expands through updates. The plan is to start out with moderately sized release. This will then be followed with regular GTA 6 updates over time. What do you think about this? Are you a big GTA fan? What do you think about their issues with their culture, with crunch?
So generally, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about crunch that much, to be honest. Just 'cause I feel like for games like Red Dead 2 and all the like Naughty Dog who were in the media about crunch as well recently, for those games to come and be as incredible as they are, it's just I think it's fairly necessary. But I have also heard the way Rockstar deal with it. There's a certain way to go about it.
Yeah.
I think if somebody wants to crunch and work hard, then of course they should be able to. But I know Rockstar were being a bit shady about it all and everything. So it's really good that they've actually done something, because normally people they normally say, oh well, that's just how it is. But at least they're actually trying to change something and trying to put their employees first, which is the main thing. Because nobody should have to nobody should live their life at work.
Right.
But yeah, so I feel like there's two sides to it. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a difference between crunching and being forced to crunch, or being influenced to crunch and things like that.
Yeah.
So I think that's good. It's a good sign. I'm not really the biggest Grand Theft Auto fan personally, but yeah, no, it's cool that it's always cool to see a new one on its way.
Yeah, so I think we're still a good ways from it. So Grand Theft Auto 5 came out in 2013. So yeah. I feel like they're going to go more of a 10-year cycle on this, somewhere closer to that. So other analysts are saying like 2023, 2022 at the very least. So this is something that's definitely super far away. And also GTA 5 just keeps selling so well. Yeah. Like it's always like top 10 every month, every year.
Yeah.
People keep buying it. I'm not sure what else there is to play on there, but like the one thing that really keeps them going, gives that game's that series legs now, is the multiplayer. Like it's a huge aspect of it now. So why not just that just buys them more time to really figure out what they want to do, work on the engine, because it's still making money as it exists now. But they must be sitting on mega bucks. Oh, yeah.
So which is what surprised me about the less ambitious scope. I don't know whether that's to do with having a multiplayer kind of esque approach to it, or like a live service kind of thing. Which I really wouldn't be surprised if GTA 6 was a like multiplayer game, like a kind of like a Destiny, or not in that vein, but you know what I mean, like always online kind of thing. I would not be surprised at all. And and I think expanding through updates game with a less ambitious scope is basically saying that that's what it's going to be, which just puts me off even more so. But yeah, it's always sort of quite cool to see GTA talked about, just because it is one of those titans. Even if it's like far away, it's always just cool to see what they're doing next with it.
Yeah, I wonder. See, I take that moderate, less ambitious scope to possibly being that rather than work on the single player for so long, they could kind of carve out story chunks and put out stories of it, like episode 1, episode 2. Maybe that's a way to even increase their sales if they do it that way. Of course, not $60 every time, but like something that's some kind of subscription where you bought all the DLC and then it rolls out that way.
Yeah, I suppose a bit like Hitman, like the new Hitman.
Right.
I don't know if Hitman 2 did it as well, but
I want to say they did.
Hitman did it. But yeah, so maybe something like that. Yeah, that could be it. Yeah, but I mean, I'm sure there'll be some multiplayer component to it because that's just been so successful for them. But yeah, it definitely makes it more interesting to hear that they're going for a different approach. So yeah, time will tell what that means.
Yep. There's been rumors of the setting. It's always just rumors, but I know last year there's a big rumor on the place taking the place that would actually have it would be like a Brazil setting. I've heard them trying to revisit Vice City again. Who knows? It's up in the air, but it's such a huge franchise. I always like. Yeah. Although maybe I'll play the first one and never really touch it again. Whenever the releases come out, but I always am blown away at their ability to create such a huge world and all these different mechanics functioning on each other at once. I always just respect that and love to see that every time that they come out with something, especially with Red Dead 2. They really just kind of completely went nuts with all these different little systems integrating and the world feeling alive. Walking by people, the way you interact with them. You could choose to interact with them, and it's just it's pretty nuts. So I love seeing that. But I think I prefer Red Dead over GTA.
I haven't played too much. I haven't played too much of Red Dead 2, but what I have played, it does seem like much more impressive than their other games.
Yeah.
I wasn't a huge fan of GTA 5. I finished. I was really excited for it when it first came out, but by the time I got to the end of it, I was really excited for it to be over, just because it sort of felt like it dragged, and I feel like all their games are like that for me. They're really cool at first, but then after a while, the sort of shine of having this open world sandbox just disappears. But with Red Dead 2, I feel like maybe they realised that and realised they needed their world to be a bit more alive. And from the very little time I've played of Red Dead 2, it seems like a real marvel. So that definitely makes GTA 6 more exciting, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think I would imagine if they're going 2022, 2023, this is a next-gen kind of exclusive game, which really lets them use that, their engine, revise it to take advantage of that extra power to fully realize, a new city, which sounds awesome. Just I can't wait to see what that looks like. Am I necessarily excited for it? I don't know. The stories in the GTA series were always way more crazy, theatrical, just like a parody, of regular life, which is fine. That's what they created. But I guess I always lean more towards Red Dead, where it's more of a serious story. But I don't know.
Yeah. I think I definitely prefer. Red Dead 1 is another. It's similar to the other Rockstar games. I really enjoyed it, and then towards the end, I think I just end up messing around too much, and then I just get bored of the game because I've messed around in it too much, and now I don't really play games in that way. Now when I play, if I was to play Red Dead 1 again, I'm sure I'd enjoy it more. But yeah, I don't know. There's just something, especially GTA 5. I really felt like GTA 5 was kind of you turn it on and it's all colourful and amazing for the first few hours, and then after a while it just seems really quite surface level. It's just, I just didn't feel like there was much to GTA 5 until they really built on that multiplayer. But even then, by the time that was sort of as accessible as it was just full of the kind of community it's full of now.
Right.
So I mean, it's definitely interesting. I mean, I do definitely have a strange relationship with Rockstar's games, but yeah, it's like I said, it's cool to finally hear something about Grand Theft Auto 6, because for a while I wasn't even sure if they were even going to bother making another one with the amount GTA 5 sells. So.
There's really no reason for them besides it's just like,
No.
it seems like the next step, but you could just keep updating multiplayer in GTA 5 and they'd still be making money.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll see what happens with that. Callum, that's it for this week, so we'll let you go. Where can they find you online?
My Twitter is Bear Munro, and that's about the only place I come out on. But yeah.
Nice. And you can find us on Twitter as well, Plastic Heart Pod. That's it for us this week. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
You're too late. I've already summoned meteor.
Okay, let's go.